Xbox Game Pass is a service that gives you access to tons of amazing games across Xbox, PC, and mobile. Figuring out what's worth playing can be difficult, so that's why I'm here. Welcome to Game Pass First Impressions. I'm your host, Ghost, and today we're talking about Loop Hero. Loop Hero is a unique roguelike from 4 Quarters and Devolver Digital that released in March of 2021, but was just added to Game Pass in April 2023. Loop Hero was recommended to me by a good friend of mine a long time ago, but when I looked into the art style, it just didn't grab me enough to get me to pull the trigger on buying. Needless to say, I was excited to hear when it came to Game Pass. I'm a fan of roguelikes, but tend to have a peculiar taste, and I can't just jump into any old roguelike. I've put a lot of hours into games like Hades, Darkest Dungeon, Merge and Blade, Slay the Spire, and Vampire Survivors. Loop Hero isn't really like any of those, but I am hooked on it. I've been playing till I'm literally falling asleep with the controller almost every night since it came out. In short, Loop Hero is a roguelike in which your character goes around a loop until they die. While going around the loop, it's your job to place obstacles into the world for your character by playing cards that are dropped by monsters you kill. You get to choose which cards drop before each loop, but there's a minimum and maximum deck size for lack of a better term. Additionally, you'll equip the best gear you can find from the monsters you kill during your loops, and you have different classes to choose from that use different gear. You can pause the gameplay at any time or adjust the game speed for both combat and travel speed, which allows you to experience the game at a pace suitable for you. I view this as an accessibility feature, and I'm always happy to see it in games. There are 3 main things that made an immediate good first impression on me and made me keep playing Loop Hero for dozens of hours. First is the placement of objects into the world. You're basically designing a new map every loop run, placing forests and mountains and deserts and decorative things into the world that'll buff your character, or things like groves or cemeteries on the loop path that will spawn special enemies for your character to fight. There are support structures that will affect the speed of how other tiles do things or how many monsters are allowed to spawn, and it gives you a ton of room to be both creative and strategize for just how challenging you want your loop to be based on the current strength of your character. There's also a ton of hidden mechanics between map items that you'll only find through placing them in certain ways, but I don't want to spoil any of that because finding them is really fun and encourages you to be creative and try new things. My second favorite thing about Loop Hero is gearing the character. It feels like a really simplified Diablo-style gear system stats-wise. Each class has unique stats on the gear that drop for it, and the classes have distinctly different playstyles. You've got a sword and board fighter, a rogue that deals in evasion and critical hits, and a necromancer that summons an army of skeletons to fight for you that you power up in various ways. There might even be more actually, but I haven't unlocked them yet. I've tried multiple builds across all 3 classes, and there's a lot of room for player expression without compromising the strength of your character. A trait every roguelike should have in my opinion. And last but certainly not least is the story. I haven't mentioned it yet, but there's a whole underlying story going on about why you're on these loops to begin with, why you're the one rebuilding the world. In between loops, you'll go back to town where you get to rebuild your own village by using materials you gathered during your loops. You'll unlock different buildings and kind of like locations that will in turn unlock things like new cards to choose from for world obstacles, player power-ups, or crafting recipes for items that you can use to take on your loops as sort of a buff to your character going on behind the scenes. The story's intriguing and it makes me want to keep playing so I can figure out exactly what's going on. I compare it to the feeling of beating Hades for the first time and talking to your mother. When you get sent back, it leaves you wanting to get back to her as soon as possible so you can learn more about her and your past. And when you beat a boss in Loop Hero, or unlock a building in your town, it'll give you that same sort of carrot on a stick, but in a way that feels good. If you like roguelikes that are more strategy-oriented than action, you enjoy typical high fantasy settings, and you like good fantasy storytelling, then you should definitely give Loop Hero a try. Yeah, bye.